In this video, I'm warning you for a red flag that we often don't see as a red flag. In the background of this video, see an image of a man showing aversion. This is an actor, which should be obvious. This actor displays aversion. Someone is upset about something and they don't want to be involved with that something they're upset about. It can be food that shows signs of decay, or you should have aversion to poisonous food. So aversion in itself can be a healthy thing if it's aversion against something that's an objective danger. And even then, the aversion is just a sign for you to do something about it constructively. When you are dealing with human beings that operate in social aversion, that is a red flag. Now, what is social aversion? Social aversion is when an individual does not want to face their deep-rooted issues. Instead, they single out one or two people or a group of people upon whom they project all their frustration. Because there are things they don't want to face, but because they don't face what they need to face, the thing they don't want to face keeps haunting them. So to deal with the stress and with the frustration of them being haunted by the thing they don't want to face, they redirect this stress and frustration onto selected targets. And they will find some excuse to justify their aversion of that particular individual. Haven't you noticed it that you're in a group and there is one individual complaining about someone else saying, I don't like her or I don't like him, who does he think she is, or who do they think they are, or I really can't stand them. But when you listen to their reasons, they don't actually have any reasons to have any aversion against the other individual. Look, if you were a child and you were sexually molested by someone, then I can understand that you have aversion against that individual due to what they did onto you. But even then, that aversion should be processed, or else it will turn into bitterness. But often people have aversion against people and there is nothing behind it that can justify them having feelings of aversion against their target. Now, social aversion by itself is not a good thing. Aversion for objective dangers, for example, poisoned food or buildings with asbestos, for example, okay, that's a healthy thing. But to have aversion for the long term against a human being, that will turn into hatred, self-righteousness, and eventually bitterness. So it's not a good thing at all. Christ said to love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't specifically say to love those you like. Liking simply means someone gives in to your expectations. So Christ didn't say to love those that validate you. He didn't say that. He didn't say love those that look like you. He said love your neighbor as yourself. Neighbor means everyone of the human population. You got it? So this whole aversion thing is a defect and is an abomination in God's sight. If someone did something to seriously harm you and you're shocked by it, then you may feel aversion when you remember about the event or when you encounter an individual. That is because something needs to be processed. So the aversion you sense means that something needs to be solved. Or if the individual is a reprobate and they're dangerous, then repercussions must be undertaken by the community to preserve safety. So if you feel social aversion, it shows that something needs to be addressed. But too many people don't want to address what needs to be addressed, because 99% of the time, the thing that needs to be addressed is within the one that feels aversion, not the target. Let me repeat that. 99% of the time, when people feel aversion, when they feel aversion towards someone else, the one that needs to be addressed is the one feeling it, not the target. For example, I was in a train once. This happened several years ago. And there were two Dutch young women, probably university students. And one of them was really angry and complaining. She gave a bitter vibe to the environment. And she was complaining about this fellow student of hers that made a remark about the teacher. And she considered the remark disrespectful. And she was telling her friend that sat next to her that anytime she's around, she feels very angry and she's very short towards her. She's very direct that she can't stand her. And now that same woman is in the train and her target, let me say the target of her rage is not around, and she's now in rage, emitting negative energy, and she has that friend next to her giving her relief. So who is doing evil now? Who is spreading danger and negativity? She is. Not the one she doesn't like, not the one she can't stand. What happened? That other individual didn't act nor behave how she expected it. But she doesn't want to face her own expectations. She doesn't want to consider the bigger picture. She's just upset, and now she just doesn't want to deal with her own feelings of hurt and, well, frustration. She just doesn't want to deal with it. So she blames the other individual. But blaming the other individual doesn't resolve her own issue. So she keeps on projecting the issue on that other individual, but now that projection is also weighting her down, so now she needs to be relieved from that tension, or else that tension will cause her to collapse mentally, emotionally, and eventually physically. So she is in self-destruction, but she doesn't want to face it. She is in denial. Instead, she just wants relief. She's blaming her target for her being in self-destruction, even though it's her holding on to self-destruction, because she keeps pointing the finger at that other fellow student, even though she's the one in the negative. So social aversion is never right. When you feel it, it means something needs to be addressed. If you're not willing to address things, you're part of the problem. That's it. And a lot of people, including believers, they don't want to hear this. Why? It comes down to this. Anytime anyone continues in social aversion against someone, no matter who that individual is, it is because they are not moving forward. You may encounter a man in his 40s who can't stand some of the teenagers around. He's saying things like, okay, those children don't have any respect, I can't stand them, they better not be around me. But when you look at that man's life, where's he at? He doesn't even work full time because he had an accident in his late 30s. So he can't work full time, so he gets welfare as well as wages. So he works and gets a bit of welfare. What did he do in his life? He finished school, went to parties, he didn't even attend college. He went straight to work, was able to get a mortgage. He met a woman, they had 2 babies, who are now teenagers themselves. And that's it. He didn't chase his dreams. He didn't develop his talents, develop his gifts. He's not serving God, so he's stagnant. He is stuck. So now that he looks onto himself, he's upset and disappointed. But he doesn't want to face this. So the easiest thing for him to do is to redirect this anger on the youth. And this is something people do every day. They redirect the stress of what's haunting them onto someone else. And people often do this in groups, because when you do it in groups, everyone gets something out of it. Except the target, of course. The target is victimized, endangered, sometimes even killed, or they die due to the psychic violence against them. But they as a group get something out of it. So it's the same as having crack addicts come together to smoke their crack. In the same manner, people come together. I'm saying desperate people come together. Desperate in a negative sense, they come together to relieve themselves by targeting specific people. So yes, you have people that come together just to complain and murmur to generate psychic violence against people. It happens. Why? Because they are not moving forward. They are stagnating. They're going backwards. So if you have a friend or a relative or someone close to you that's often complaining, they may not complain directly about specific individuals, but they may complain about the EU often, or they may complain about the government. You can complain, okay? If something doesn't work well and it's a defect that should have been addressed, you have the right to complain. There are times you ought to complain, don't get me wrong, but when you complain, it's just a push to yourself and to others to do something about it. But what often happens is people keep stuck in the complaining. They don't do anything. And once they realize that they're only complaining, Now they need to face this about themselves. Why aren't they doing anything? It's because they don't want to face things. They don't want to face their own defect. So they want to have targets to redirect it towards. And such people, eventually, very quickly, they become delusional. So someone may vote for a political party. And when people ask him, why did you vote for that party? Well, the party has some good points. Tell us the good points. The individual can't tell the good points. And when the individual is confronted with the destructive policies of that party, he says, well, at least now it's not that other party that will be in power. So people ask him, what? So you only voted for that party because you had something against another party? Okay, what did you have against that other party? And now that the individual has to explain it, he can't explain it. Because that other party couldn't stand, they didn't do anything personally to him. So then people realize, okay, so you want to vote and enable a political regime that's not beneficial to you nor to the people around you just because you are dumping negativity on another political party who didn't harm you personally? So everyone around you has to put up with the danger you emit and the danger you enable just because you don't want to face things? In the world, seldom do confrontations go so deep. Because people that persist in social aversion, quickly they become delusional. That's how you get political fanatics. Whether it's in the Brexit case, whether they are pro-Trump supporters, or whether they are leftist extremists, that's how you get political extremism. When people are delusional. A delusion is when you want an escape that's not worth it. Someone that wants an escape that will not last, but they persist in that escape no matter what, that's delusional. A fantasy is when you have a dream or a plan that needs to be edited. It needs to be worked on. Because in the current state, it's not functional. That's a fantasy. A delusion is when you just want an escape. You don't want to deal with anything. You don't want to process anything. You just want to flee. Even when it's obvious that fleeing is impossible or not desirable. But you insist on fleeing. And you distort your own mind by persisting in fleeing. And that is delusional. People that continue in social aversion, they become delusional. And delusional people are dangerous people because they enable danger, they enable violence, they don't make sense mentally nor emotionally, and they turn violent. They explode when they don't get the relief they expected from the delusion. Because anyone that supports a delusion supports because there is some relief they expect in return. And when the relief doesn't come, which obviously it cannot come because it's a delusion, they explode. So when you sense signs of prolonged or enduring social aversion coming from someone, I'm not saying it's against you, but if they have long-term social aversion, pay attention. Because when they continue like that, they'll become delusional. And even if they're not delusional yet, that social aversion you remain in attracts evil spirits. And evil spirits get a hold on them. There are even believers who became delusional due to social aversion. Yes, you have believers that operate in toxic darkness because they refuse to forgive, or maybe it has something to do with forgiveness, they refused to forfeit wrong thinking patterns. And delusional people that became delusional due to social aversion, they will perceive the progression of bitterness as advancement. So someone may have been a bit flexible in the past, in which they would bear with people, in which they had patience with people, in which they looked at the bigger picture, in which they had some empathy for people. But now, they just want to flee. They can't tolerate any frustration nor any discomfort. So now, anytime they encounter someone, they have this narcissistic screening that goes on in their mind to see whether they can benefit from someone. If they can't benefit, they're done with an individual. They don't care how it affects the individual. The individual doesn't even exist for them. They don't consider the individual a human being with value. And they say, well, that was the old Patrick. The new Patrick is very straight up, to the point. They perceive their progression into bitterness as an advancement, as a liberation, even though the opposite is happening. That is when you're dealing with delusional people. Whatever is dark, they see as light. And whatever is light, they perceive as dark. They know that the light is right, but because the light will expose their delusion and the danger they've emitted and sponsored to the community, that shows now that they're not as good as they think they are, and they need to face things, and it means they need to go through uncomfortable stuff. They don't want that. They want to avoid discomfort at all costs. So the light they will perceive as black, as dark, and the darkness they'll acknowledge it's darkness, but they will try to justify the darkness if the darkness has some light in it. Imagine you're in a room. No, not in a room. Imagine it's night. Okay? There are no stars in the sky because there's a bit of fog in the climate. I mean, in the atmosphere. So it's completely dark. You can barely see anything, and someone keeps rejoicing on how clear the sky is. Wouldn't you think that this individual needs to go to a mental institution or to a mental hospital because it's dark? You can barely see it in front of you, but they keep rejoicing in how bright the day is. It's night, so it's not day, but they are praising the bright daylight, even though there isn't any. And it's not that they're walking by faith, that they're declaring the good in the situation. It's just that they don't want to face that it's a dark night with fog in the sky and they can barely see. They don't want to face that. Well, that's how people are that become delusional due to social aversion. Social aversion is the main reason people become delusional and dangerous. Social aversion is the main reason why many unbelievers turn into reprobates. Okay? So beware of social aversion. Beware of it. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.